This country was supposed to be the future.
But today, it's not living up to that potential.
Japan is not developing, for 30 years.
Japanese tech companies used to be household names.
There's nothing left, really.
Today, most of its phone and gadget companies have been surpassed by the likes of Huawei and Xiaomi in China and Samsung in South Korea.
The number of patents, technology in Japan used to be very high.
Japan is now the world's third largest economy behind the US and China, but it will continue to slip down.
Japanese phones used to be good until iPhones came in too, right? It was one of the world's best until iPhone took over.
Today, you'll find more tech-enabled infrastructure in China and Korea than you will in Japan. Japan's economy has been stuck for decades.
Of the crises and disasters over Japan.
Japan has the world's third largest economy, but Germany is quickly catching up.
Its GDP growth rate has averaged just 1.1% per year since 1991.
Shrinking population, shrinking labor force, and aging population have negative impact on both sides of the economy.
Japan's population will fall by 30% by 2070. In addition to dealing with a shrinking population, it also suffers from a lack of innovation, and there are cultural issues at play.
This is one of the reasons that the creativity culture and the innovative culture is faded.
Unlike other major economies, it has not really opened up to immigrants to combat its economic challenges.
It's not very common to see foreigners. So there are several reasons behind it. So one reason is social reason, cultural reasons.
Its currency has fallen a lot in recent years to the US dollar. Just look at this chart. For years, $1 got you around 110 Japanese yen, but it's weakened a lot, at one point recently reaching 150 yen.
So what's happening in Japan and why is it stuck?
Here are 4 reasons why it's stuck. Number 1, an aging population and shrinking workforce. Its population is now declining at a very rapid rate. Today, Japan's population is 125 million people. By 2100, that's expected to be just 75 million. It will lose more than 500,000 people per year. Many people here just don't want to have babies, and its fertility rate has plummeted. Japan has one of the oldest populations in the world, and a declining birth rate with an increasing life expectancy will create a problem.
So low birth rate, but living for a longer period. So this means population became old.
Because this puts a massive strain on the labor market when you have fewer younger workers entering the workforce to replace those who are retiring. The shrinking workforce hampers economic growth and productivity, and that leads to stagnation of the economy.
Aging population and a shrinking labor force had significant consequences and significant negative impacts on Japanese economy.
Number 2, high debt and deflation. Japan has been grappling with high levels of government debt for many years now. In fact, its debt to GDP ratio is one of the highest in the world. To counter deflation and stimulate economic growth, the government has relied on borrowing, which has only contributed to the rising debt burden. And the high debt levels limit the government's ability to invest in things like infrastructure, education, and other areas, which would ultimately drive long-term economic growth.
Central bank or government try to accelerate or stimulate the Japanese economy, but it all fails. It doesn't change so much. But in these days, after the massive rise of US inflation, Japanese inflation rate does a little bit higher.
Number 3, structural issues and lack of innovation. In 1989, more than half of the world's top 20 most valuable companies were Japanese. Today, none are Japanese.
So when we study the history of development of Japan, those people who funded current large companies like Mitsubishi, Honda, Toyota, and so on, they were creative people and that had this entrepreneurship culture for making job, creation, new technologies, and so on. However, in the younger generation of Japan, I don't see that much risk taking.
The country has been slow to adopt new technology, let alone create new technology, and it lacks innovation in many sectors. Traditional industries are dominating the economy, but new industries struggle to emerge. And this lack of innovation and resistance to change by its people are killing productivity growth and making it harder for Japan to compete globally. Number 4, corporate culture and inefficiencies. Japan's corporate culture is often criticized because it doesn't doesn't allow for risk-taking, and it's resistant to changes. People here dedicate their life to a single company, and seniority gets promotions and better salaries rather than better employees.
In Japan, the salaries and wages are based on age, based on seniority. So then, if we want to let the people work until die, so they are happy because their salaries are increasing. But actually, this is killing motivation for the younger generation.
On top of all of this, a rigid work environment discourages entrepreneurship and innovation.
All those big car manufacturers, they don't even they might manufacture the cars within the country, but all the factories are outsourced. All those young workers are now older. They're not doing the groundwork. No one's doing construction work or manufacturing jobs.
So can this country get unstuck? And if so, how?
Well, it will need to change its economic policies and make some major changes, because an older population presents a challenge for its economy.
They already have houses, they no need to change their cars, they married already, so the expenditures and the expenses on consumption is much lower, and no need to travel.
For one, it would need to increase its birth rate or bring in foreigners to work.
If you don't have enough working population, you don't have enough taxpayers to finance the government budget, to pay for the government budget, and then government find problem for paying for the social security, pension, and so on.
Welcome more foreigners and to encourage them to stay much longer and enjoy their culture, food, and of course spend money.
Its declining population also means that existing homes, malls, and offices are going to be left sitting empty. In some parts of Japan, you see deserted shopping centers.
Japanese economy facing several structural issues, especially after the burst of the bubble in 1990s. Japanese economy went into a long-term economic recession, which is so-called lost decade, although the length of this recession is more than 1 decade, and still Japanese economy is facing with a low economic growth rate.
Of course, Japan has tried new economic policies and reforms over the years, but that impact has been limited.
Several policies for opening the borders toward foreign migrants have been taken, and for example, one of them was providing a highly skilled foreign professional visa. It's a visa type, a 5 years visa that gives you as a foreigner the same right as a Japanese. You can establish company, you can do any type of business.
To change its course, it will need to change its labor market to promote flexibility and increase workforce participation.
We need reforms, such as, for example, reforms regarding the working population, increasing the retirement age, bringing more females as a labor force, accepting more migrants from other countries.
It would need to foster innovation and competition and improve productivity and efficiency. But Japanese are set in their ways of tradition and culture. They are deeply rooted here. Change does not happen easily, if at all. Over the years, investors have been wary of Japan for fear that its growth won't pay off. But that could also be changing too, as billionaire investor Warren Buffett is going all in on Japan lately. But many people I speak to here sound frustrated and worry about their country's future.
What else did, and we lost Japan as Tokyo as a financial hub to Hong Kong, now to Singapore. There's nothing left, really.
And technology, I mean, Sony, Panasonic.
Yeah.
While it's almost certain that its population is going to continue to go down drastically, the bigger question is, what will happen to Japan and its economy, its wealth, its standard of living?
The next few decades, if we don't observe a drastic change, then definitely Japan wouldn't be in the top 10 large economies in the world. So Japan will be a smaller size economy and not with this level of GDP per capita.